This is NJN News with Kent Manahan and Bramante Bryant with sports.
Good evening. Governor Whitman tackled two tough issues in her State of the State speech today, the Transportation Trust Fund and school vouchers. As NJN News reported last night, the governor found a transportation solution that avoids hiking the gasoline tax. And on school vouchers, she set up a task force that buys an extra year of study time before legislation is passed. This was Christy Whitman's first State of the State address, delivered to a joint session of the legislature. As Aron reports.
All eyes were on Governor Whitman as she entered the Assembly chamber. And after one obligatory standing ovation, the governor declined another so she could get to her message. But 1994 was a good year in New Jersey, the comeback year she called it, the best year since 1988 with 60,000 new jobs created, in large part because of Republicans, she said, and their new restraint on taxes and spending.
You work hard for the tax dollars you send to Trenton and your local governments. It's your money. Government has no right to take a single penny more than it needs, and we won't.
As we told you last night, the governor announced she is moving the Division of Motor Vehicles out of the Department of Law and Public Safety and into the Department of Transportation as a way of financing the Transportation Trust Fund. Motor vehicle registration fees, hiked in 1990, will largely finance the fund instead of a hike in the gasoline tax. Those fees were to expire. Whitman, however, will continue them, calling them preferable to a new tax. It's a move some call inventive.
Well, it's very inventive, and it's always good to live off the backs of the people who have made responsible decisions before you.
The governor had promised a year ago to push for a school voucher pilot project in Jersey City. That move is strongly opposed by the state teachers union. Whitman signed an executive order today setting up a task force to devise the program. Her speech strongly supported the concept, but her move delays the implementation.
We will propose legislation in time to be implemented for the 1996 school year. Vouchers are a daring educational experiment. The only thing we have to fear is success.
In other areas, the governor announced a permit easing process at the Department of Environmental Protection that will give businesses money-back guarantees of prompt service. She promised more income tax and business tax reduction in her next budget and praised her administration for conducting an open style of government that brings all parties to the table.
We're getting so good at bringing everyone to the table that we're thinking about offering our services to Major League Baseball, but they haven't called yet.
The speech got varying reaction.
A lot of good, touchy-feely words, good feeling. A lot of they're short on substance, big time.
Overall, I think the governor made some very interesting points.
The governor mentioned just two new spending initiatives, $10 million for reform of the juvenile justice system and $2 million for a community development bank project for the cities. A key Democrat questioned that amount.
$2 million for the cities sounds like it's going to rescue the cities. It's roughly $1 per person.
Another key Democrat came at the governor from the other side.
Which obviously she's appealing to a national audience that we in New Jersey are cutting because we're lowering the income tax. But the real world is we aren't cutting government at all.
But Whitman sees it differently and says she's sticking to her plan. She offered this thought for the year ahead.
In this election year, the temptation to stick to the status quo, to play it safe, will be great. It is a temptation we must avoid. We must maintain the momentum we have created and the trust in government, in good government, that we are building. The nation is watching New Jersey.
We're in the governor's outer office where Christy Whitman joins us now. Governor, you said the nation is watching New Jersey. Is that a modest way of saying the nation is watching Christy Whitman?
No, the nation's watching New Jersey. They're watching what's happening here and how we're addressing the problems that we're addressing. And in fact, they're taking some of those ideas and applying them to other states.
You announced today a solution to the Transportation Trust Fund financing dilemma,
right.
One that avoids hiking the gas tax.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it better to live with higher car registration fees than to pay a higher gasoline tax? People are paying one way or another.
Well, first of all, this doesn't increase any fees, and a new tax would be a definite increase to everybody. It would cost them more than what it's costing them now, and this doesn't. This continues what's already there in the fees that were put in for the JUA originally and then slid over to the MTF.
Those fees were set to expire.
They were set to expire, and we're going to continue them. So it's not in, and we're not going to increase them. We're not going to raise them. We're not going to let them expire. But it's a way to pay for this that not only solves the problem of the Highway Trust Fund and increases the spending that we're going to put into Highway Trust Fund, which creates jobs and is a very real benefit to this state. It also, we're able to guarantee to people that they won't see increase in fares in New Jersey Transit for at least 3 years, and allows us to put some more money toward municipalities to help them in maintaining their roads and bridges, as well as for the state to apply to those concerns and mass transit. So it's a way to fund this that does not mean that people have to pay more than they're currently paying.
I suppose a naysayer could say that only New Jerseyans pay car registration fees, whereas out-of-staters pay gas taxes, and we could be collecting more from out-of-staters under the other solution.
Sure, people can say that, but it also means that our people pay more on a daily basis because they were driving regularly. In fact, we worked out the numbers, and if you were to increase the gas tax 5 cents, which is the minimum that everybody looked at, this is less for people if you drive more than 8,000 miles a year. And in New Jersey, you drive a lot more than 8,000 miles a year for most people.
Let's talk about school vouchers. You said that the program will begin in 1996. I assume you mean the 1996-97 school year that begins a year and 8 months from now.
Yeah, September of 96.
People are saying that you are backtracking on a campaign pledge to at least try this program in Jersey City.
No, I'm very much committed to at least trying this program in Jersey City, and this is why we're doing it this way, because frankly, right now, the votes aren't there in the legislature to get it done. And it's not necessarily the legislature's fault. There is a lot of discussion amongst those who support vouchers, what kind of a voucher program they're comfortable with. Not everybody was on board with the program that we put forward, which we thought was a very responsible one that allowed us to really monitor and ensure this was a program that was going to work. So we've said, all right, rather than lose this, put it out there and have people vote against it because there isn't a consensus even amongst those who support vouchers. We said, let's take this step that allows us to put together and bring people to the table who support it, as well as those who don't, because I'm going to appoint as one of my appointments someone from the NJA who they oppose this, and let's hear from them. Let those who support it hear from them what their objections are, and put together a bill that'll be bipartisan that will really allow us to move this program forward in 96.
We have just a few seconds left. Are you happy with today's speech?
Yes, other than the fact that I seem to call everybody Joe in the legislature. I'm going to have to do something about renaming them all.
All right, Governor Whitman, thanks for joining us. This is Michael Aron in the governor's outer office. Back to you, Ken.
Governor Michael, thank you. As we reported, the governor has proposed moving the Division of Motor Vehicles out of the Department of Law and Public Safety and into the Department of Transportation. DMV Director Richard Kamin told us he thinks that move makes sense.
Well, we hope it's going to mean an even better system, and we're making ongoing improvements. We think this, since transportation already does the inspection of buses, we're involved with the handling of heavy-duty trucks. There's a number of areas where we already cooperate. We're even electronically already linked between the departments, so I see no change in that regard, and in fact, we hope to provide better service in many ways.
Officials say they hope to make the move by July 1st. Besides tax cuts, the governor is also calling for education reform. The Department of Education will soon issue a comparative spending guide. It will give a district-by-district breakdown of school spending. In addition, the governor is also recommending an early warning test for fourth graders. Whitman and Education Commissioner Leo Klagholz believe an early test will give teachers a better indication of students that may need help.
We have an 8th grade and a graduation test. We need the 4th grade test. It's going to drive accountability down into the lower grades, which we don't have now.
The governor is expected to ask the legislature for about $2 million to fund the test statewide. Predictably, reaction to Governor Whitman's State of the State address today broke down along party lines. Our two political insiders, Republican Roger Bodman and Democrat Jim McQueeny, aren't likely to break that mold. Gentlemen?
Well, Ken, it was vintage Christy Whitman. You know, Jim, her speech style is very consistent and very good in my view. Plain talk, straight talk, absolutely understandable. You know, we will cut taxes, we will make New Jersey stronger, we will make government more efficient. None of these flowery $64,000 words with this woman.
Gee, and I thought you were going to disagree with certain parts of this speech. I'm sorry. I think one of the things here, the reality is, this is a suburban governor talking to a suburban legislature with an electorate, voting electorate that is now largely suburban. That's changed a lot in the last few years. But You're really making the converted is speaking to the converted on this thing. For instance, no new taxes. Okay, that's the common mantra. And if you have to tax, which is something she brought up in this speech, you have to dedicate the tax. That can pose some problems going forward for communities because it's not very popular to dedicate taxes for people who are left out.
Yeah, but she was talking about Transportation Trust Fund specifically, that we're going to take 3 cents and dedicate it and so forth, so that people know where that money is going. And it's not new taxes. It is the existing gasoline tax. They're not going to pay a dime more or a penny more in new taxes in this regard. But
by and large, a pretty good speech, frankly, on the delivery. But one of the things that wasn't mentioned, that will be mentioned in more details, in a couple of more weeks, you're going to see the budget address where the rubber meets the road, as they say. One key thing. Where are you going to cut people? Only cut 200 people out of the whole state bureaucracy, 65,000 last year.
The fact, again, is that her last budget was really a Jim Florio budget. She cut it. She pared it substantially. It spent less money than the previous year. 60,000 new jobs were created in the state. She cut income taxes by 15%. She's accomplished an awful lot in her first year.
It's a good deal, but you got Florio in the rearview mirror now. This is the first one she's given that is hers to go forward. How many employees are going to get cut back? That's critical.
She's talking about more tax cuts, and she's talking about regulatory reform. Her line was something to the effect that you shouldn't lose your job if we fail to do ours. I mean, and get those overburdensome regulations out of the way of New Jersey and start to get the state moving even further in the proper direction.
Yeah, I think it was good, except that when you talk about the continuation of tax cuts, it's $2 a week now, or $1 a week for a family of 4 under $40,000.
But
not sour grapes. Not sour grapes. It's a tax cut.
What do you mean? You know, it's $600 million in sales tax cuts done by the Republican legislature before she became governor, and now 15% and plus more coming in the income tax. It's significant in terms of making New Jersey open for business.
I think, and not to spoil the party, because this really is something that the governor's day, and it is the governor's day for a day like this. One key thing is going to be in that budget address, just how you're going to cut out of $30 billion in total costs at all government levels. How are you going to get 80% of that as employee payroll? How do you get rid of them?
Well, you know,
I hate to have the last word on this, Raj, but we got to go back to this. I'll get a little last word here today because you were so fond of her. Okay, we're back to Ken.
Roger, Jim, thank you. And if you missed today's State of the State address, you will get another chance. NJN News will rebroadcast the speech and the Democratic response to the address at 10 o'clock tonight.